Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program from our studios in Jerusalem. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today across the world. Appreciate you with us. We're the program that brings you news and features from the land of Israel and looking a bit behind the scenes about what's going on. And first of all, getting straight into the news, Israel is going to be starting, very unfortunately, is going to be starting to vaccinate children between 5 and 11 years of age with background illnesses, despite the fact that injecting a child with an experimental vaccine is madness, as they don't need it. Health Ministry approves the Pfizer injectable for 5 to 11-year-olds.
Yeah, maybe
Tuesday.
Let me tell you that is 99.98% of morbidity for children with the corona. So it's very important to know. So it's almost nothing.
I think I'm getting onto that, but we'll see
Okay.
how we go on. It's the Health Ministry, the Israeli Health Ministry has approved the Pfizer injectable 5 to 11-year-olds, as Nathalie was saying, even though they don't need it, Tuesday, even though, by the way, it can have an adverse effect on their health, which is the main issue. Considering the fact that children are at virtually zero risk of contracting COVID, it's absolute madness to give them an experimental vaccine of which no one on the planet, of which no one on the planet has any idea what the long-term consequences of it having it are, because there is no data to tell us. Meanwhile, in Israel, 100 medical doctors have told the Israeli government do not use COVID-19 vaccine on children. Some 100 medical professionals in the country have expressed opposition to vaccinating children with the injectable in a letter to the Health Ministry, according to local news media. In the letter, the contents of which Channel 12 were obtained by Channel 12 News, one of the main news networks, the doctors explained that there is no room to vaccinate children at this time, and based the call on the following values: the value of caution and the value of humility. They also cited the recognition that we do not understand everything about the virus and the vaccine against it. The first commandment of medicine is first do not harm. The letter includes, listen to this, the signatures of Dr. Amir Shakar, director of the emergency room at Leneado Hospital, Dr. Yoav Yezikiel, an expert in internal medicine and a lecturer at Tel Aviv University, and Dr. Avi Mizraki, director of the intensive care unit at Kaplan Hospital. So these are not doctors, off the rails. These are doctors working in the health industry in Israel. The doctors addressed the letter to the chiefs of the to the chiefs of the Ministry of Health, to our fellow doctors around the country, and to the entire public. We believe that not even a handful of children should be endangered through vaccination against a disease that is not too dangerous to them, they wrote. Furthermore, it cannot be ruled out that the vaccine will not have long-term effects that have not yet been discovered at this time, including growth, reproductive system or fertility. Do not rush to vaccinate children as long as the full picture is not clear. Coronavirus disease does not endanger children, and the first rule in medicine is do not harm. They went on to say, we believe it is not appropriate to impose the inconvenience of vaccination on the pediatric population, where coronavirus is not dangerous, especially at this stage, when the vaccine's efficacy in the long run is not at all clear, which is true, because first of all, now when Nathalie, they're talking about in the news the possibility of a third injectable for the adults in Israel, a third one, and we're not even a year. It's only July. For those who are mathematicians, they can work that out. From January to July, and we're on to a third.
No, this isn't.
They're becoming pincushions.
No, it's not funny. But what I heard also, because some people start to do their own studies, because we can't have any statistic from Israel directly, but there is some people who are in the medical world here in Israel, starting to wake up, starting to see that something is very wrong. And so they are looking at the general statistic of to look if there is a rate of people who are dying, okay? And so they are discovering between in February and in March that the people, the gap, the folk of 20 years old to 50 years old, there is 60 people who died. Now they take out, like there was disaster and this and that, so they take out the number that they know of people who have been in disaster, like Meron and these kind of things. But so they are looking at the people which is like not normal to see if there is an increase, and there is an increase of 60 more people. In a little country like Israel, 60 people only between 20 and 50 years old is a lot. Now they look also for the people who are higher, but it's more difficult because some people had COVID or they have like health issues and all of that. So the picture is not so clear. But between 20 years old to 50 years old, they can see an increase. Now they are, after finding that, they're looking also in the UK and in Ukraine, because it's the two other countries who also have done a lot of vaccination. Same picture. There is more people, there is a peak of mortality between 20 and 50 years old. So they can see, and usually when it's like that with a vaccine, everything stops. And now they are still pushing for more injection, and it's genocide.
And the doctors say that pediatrics in Israel is one of the best in the world, and pediatric intensive care above all. It is extremely rare, the doctors say, for a child to die of a viral disease. We do not think it's right to manage private life and public health policy out of a so-called ongoing fear of a viral illness that is very rarely liable to harm our children's lives. Now, going on the same subject, Israeli Prime Minister Nathalie Bennett, in a shocking statement Thursday, that's last Thursday, scapegoated the unvaccinated population of Israel with unproven rhetoric. He said, vaccine refusers endanger us all, pushing the experimental alleged vaccine, the injectable. Israeli Prime Minister Nathalie Bennett excoriated unvaccinated Israelis Thursday, calling them a health threat and a danger to the Israeli economy, despite the risks associated with the experimental so-called vaccine, the injectable, and the warnings from Israeli doctors that children shouldn't be vaccinated, as we mentioned. He said 1 million Israelis are refusing to get vaccinated. Bennett continued, they are endangering the entire population. I don't understand, by the way, Mr. Bennett, how healthy people endanger the whole population. Unbelievably, and in a dictatorial fashion, Bennett warned that the vaccine holdouts could cause the government to impose a fourth national lockdown. Here we have a threat that people who haven't had the vaccine are causing a lockdown. In an unprecedented manner, he even suggested, listen to this, that citizens pressurize their unvaccinated friends and relatives to get the injectable. If you know a vaccine refuser, convince them, explain to them that they are risking other people's health. Now, how do people who are healthy risk other people's health, Nathalie? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
And I have other things. I have other things to tell you, that 90%, of the people who are in hospital right now are people who are sicker and who have been vaccinated. So it's like this doesn't stand. You can't add the dots to, the story doesn't make any sense.
Right. Meanwhile, the Israeli People's Committee, IPC, a citizen-led group of Israeli health experts, has issued an urgent warning that the so-called injectable from Pfizer damages virtually every system of the human body. Detailed report by the IPC, the Israeli People Committee, warns that getting jabbed with a Pfizer syringe could lead to catastrophic health outcome, as evidenced by the high number of people who have already had their lives ruined in Israel. In the United States, America's frontline doctors' attorney has filed a lawsuit against the United States government for 45,000 COVID injectable deaths. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're hearing. So it's certainly a very, very alarming subject. If you'd like to comment, please do let us know. You can do that. We're on live, but you can also email us at info@israelfirst.org. And
Yes,
you
and we
can get in
have
touch with us.
and we have a lot of information. Like we really watch the news, but like not the main media. Obviously, the main media is finished, but we receive facts. We receive research of doctors or different people who really do some research about the COVID and also the injectable. And one of the last things that we listened to this week was like a doctor from Canada who was speaking very, very important subject, saying there is not only, because we know that some people are dying of clots very quickly, but he said this is also clots that we can see with like instrument, like medical instruments. But he said now there is a bigger danger that with this spike protein is like making tiny clots at the level of capillaries. And capillaries is where the oxygen change is, like there is a lot of chemical things happening, and so it's like tiny little place in your body, and you can look at it medically. And I look also to a blog which is only for doctors and nurses and medical staff, and they were saying also, you know, how they felt bad because they had the injection and they want to know what's happening with them. And there is many information of people speaking to each other, but there is nothing on the media. Just think that the media is finished, gone, the general media. And we need to know all these things. People are waking up, and hopefully more people are waking up. There is a lot of people, you see, what they see is like they have to wake up and have some discernment. And it's not just about the COVID, very interesting, it's about freedom. That we are free, that our body is our own, is a gift from our Creator, but nobody has to push us in the corner. You know, here now you have a green pass again. I was going to a museum because there was like a special exhibition, and it's the beginning, and so they were inviting journalists, and I need to have a green pass, and I don't have a green pass, and that's it. No restaurant. We are again restricted. All the people who are not vaccinated now in Israel are getting restricted. Now there is also, I was looking, I mean, we are looking at a lot of information to really give you a bit of a picture of what's happening here. There was also a midwife, and this was in a French interview, which was very interesting for me, from people here. And she's been working so hard. She was with all, you know, the gear that they had to have at the beginning of the first wave of COVID, and she was helping ladies having babies. I know she knows how important it is. She lost her job, and now she doesn't want to be vaccinated, and she's just been chucked out, you know, like rejected. And she's
had to leave her job.
Yeah, but like with nothing, that's it. You go now, you don't want to be vaccinated, so now you go. And for her, like she lost a job. And for her, the thing was the more difficult, the psychological thing, saying like, I've been rejected, I love my job. And it wasn't even the financial who was the worst for her. It was like knowing that she was rejected. She could not work anymore as a nurse in a hospital. Now, fortunately here in Israel, when you're a midwife, different than a nurse, when you're a midwife, you can work, because it's like you can be independent. And so she has more people now that she sees independently, and she can carry on her work, and she's very happy. But she really had to go through a personal change, and saying, okay, no, I'm worth it. And I think this is what's happening for people, is like suddenly we have to know deeply inside of us how precious we are, to be able to understand that we are fighting something big, and it's not just the COVID, and it's not just the injection, this is our freedom, and that we are made in the image of God, and that there is like something fundamentally wrong in what's happening all around the world.
And that's important for you to know what's happening in Israel, because it's Israel first. That if things happen here, they're going to happen in other places now. One of the things that has been happening is there have been protests outside the residence of the Prime Minister by the freedom protesters. Have been protesting because of the coercion to have the injectable, and they've been meeting outside the home, the residence, the official residence of the Prime Minister Nathalie Bennett. The protesters were there against, they say, they were pro-freedom and against anti-fascism, and they were reacting to Bennett's shocking speech Thursday when he blamed the unvaccinated with unproven rhetoric. Bennett was saying the refusers are endangering us all, and so they were protesting outside and saying that they were not happy about the coercion, because it's not just that they're not unhappy about what's happening, but there's coercion behind the scenes. As Natalie was saying, if you don't want to take the injectable, then you lose your job, and many people have lost their jobs in hospitals, in private industry, in Mobileye, in Bezek International, which is the internet provider in Israel. People have lost their work if they didn't want to have the injectables. So these people are freedom protesters outside the Prime Minister's office. Unfortunately, there was police violence against the protesters and unnecessary arrests. There wasn't any need for any arrests. There wasn't that many of them, and so you don't need to arrest them. But anyway, there was violence, very sadly. But the protesters have said that they will continue, Natalie, to protest. And so this is the big issue. If you have to sum up what's going on in Israel, it's the fight for freedom, the fight to be free, to make your decisions, to choose what health choices you want to make, to choose where you want to go without being restricted. As Natalie was saying, you can't even go to a museum or a restaurant without having the injectable passport now.
But you know what I want to say also, I think which is very important, there is some people who are waking up because they see, they are looking for the truth now. Now, some people will say, why is Israel, why are the people have really run into obeying the government here? Because like we can see in France is very different, and there is a lot of rebellion in France for freedom. But you have to understand that Israel is very different than France, because Israel, first of all, is a little country in the Middle East among a lot of enemies countries who've been fighting them for years. And so when your government is saying something to you, the government has been always doing things to save you. So the government has been always like, go into your shelter, a bomb is coming. It's like they have to obey. So they've been used and thinking that the government is always doing good things and want to save them. And suddenly with what's happening now, for them it's like very, very difficult as Israelis and Zionists, the one who love their country, that suddenly they realize that the government is not doing the right things for them and is really hurting them. Some have really a hard time, but some wants to have the truth, and some are starting to wake up and saying, wow, wait a minute, something is wrong. And like they had 2 injections, but now they are the government is saying you have to have the 3rd one. And more people are starting to say, hey, why do we have a 3rd one? It should be working and it is not working. And a lot of people who had the injectable suddenly is having the variant, the COVID. So what's happening? And so people are starting to think for themselves, because very often they leave the government to think for themselves.
Well, it's to cover their tracks, the government are saying about the variant, because there's no other reason why either the thing works or it doesn't. It's not working, so they're saying it's a variant. So you have to have another thing that doesn't work And then there'll be another variant. I mean, it's common sense that this is a lot of nonsense.
And meanwhile, the injectable is really destroying. Like again, we were looking at some doctors who were speaking. At the beginning, they were saying, when you have the injection and to have the antibodies, it will just stay in your arm. And suddenly they realize that the protein is going all around your body, is going to go onto your blood vessel, which is like we're doing clots, like I was saying also before. And so is all your body who is invaded. And so is dangerous.
And the reports are being withheld. There are Freedom of Information Acts, questions being put by journalists to the Ministry of Health which are not being answered. So there's a lot of issues here. And at the end of the day, it's about freedom. People are free, should be free to make their own choices regarding health and regarding whether they need this thing or not. I understand, when there's a pandemic, you have to be careful, but this is experimental. This is not the standard one that was issued against flu or against any of the other illnesses over the past. This is an experimental one which we do not know the full long-term consequences.
Yes.
So,
and it's not a natural. It's not a natural virus too.
But I think
something is a homemade one.
I think that people need to understand that there's a bigger picture here, as Nathalie was saying, and it's not. It's about freedom and valuing people's lives, and also about the times that we're living in. And remember, we've been looking at the Book of Enoch, which is referred to in the Bible. And we've been looking at the story of the watchers, the angels that fell to earth. We've been looking at the issue of the difference between evil and sin. Very, very important that we differentiate. Evil, sin is not evil and evil is not sin. There are different things. And the Bible says that all have sinned. So people sin, and since the fall of Adam and Eve. But evil is different, and you say, well, how can you give an example? Well, the Holocaust is an example that people can relate to, is evil. Now, what was the story? Well, the story was, if you remember, about the angels falling. They began to lust for human women, the fallen angels. Whether they were fallen at that stage, I don't know, Nathalie, whether they were angels who hadn't fallen or not. They became fallen women, and at the instruction
they became fallen women?
No, at the instruction of, the angels fell. I wasn't sure whether they fell before they lusted after women or...
Yeah, I think they make the decision. They make the decision to come... Oh, okay. The story that I heard with the Jewish tradition is like there was some... they saw that man fell and that it was very hard to live on earth. And they said, well, let us go down and you will see we will do better than them. And God said, okay, go over there and you will see. So this is a story behind. And I quite like it because it really makes sense. And they come and they fell even quicker and worse than man. So this really make...
So the book of Enoch, I should just explain, gives us the time of Noah, the days of Noah, and Jesus said, as in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. So if you want to know how it was in the days of Noah, you have to know how it was. If you want to know how it is at the coming of the Son of Man, you have to know how it is in the days of Noah. Yeah. So that's the issue. Now, the fallen angels began to procreate amongst humanity, and the offspring of these unions are the Nephilim. Now, the Nephilim are referred to in Genesis. You can see the reference there. They were savage giants. I would say a better way of putting it would be monsters, because if we say giants, you can think of a big friendly giant, but these were monsters. They were evil. They were savage giants who pillaged the earth and endangered humanity. Remember, this is at the time of the days of Noah. They taught humans new technologies that otherwise would be gradually discovered over time, not foisted all at once. This is the fallen angels. According to the book of Enoch, the watchers, the sons of God, are clearly celestial non-human beings whose actions are not only regarded as morally evil but spiritually destructive. The book of the Watchers describes the revolt of the heavenly watchers, which leads to evil on the earth. Now, we were talking about this. It's very important for you to grasp this principle, is that at the beginning there was sin, but not evil. And evil came through the fall of of the angels, which led to God's judgment. The Watchers produced giants on the earth by their union with human women, and these giants are evil. They were monsters. They were.
Sorry, I moved the camera.
And so there's this huge race of giants that come, and it's not one or two. It's a race of giants. We have to understand they were all over the earth, and they were coming against humans. They were eating humans. They were practicing cannibalism. They were monsters. They weren't big friendly giants like in the storybook. You've got a good example is Og, king of Bashan. Goliath and his four brothers were described in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel as giants. You remember when the 10 of the 12 spies were dispatched to check the promised land? They were petrified at seeing one of the giant Nephilim tribes. Remember, it was a tribe. We're not talking about one giant. They saw like a tribe of giants. There was a huge amount of them, and they took a grape cluster so large it took 2 men to carry it. Now, this grape cluster is very important. Why is that? Because it's a glimpse of genetic engineering of food. Remember, we said the fallen angels were tinkering with the DNA, and at this time we also have the dinosaurs, other monsters, dragons. There were fire-breathing dragons. There was all sorts of
monsters.
Yeah, monsters were created at this time.
Human and animals.
They were destructive mutations, not only amongst animals, but in the food supply. God did not make the dinosaurs, but rather they were the result of the Nephilim and fallen angels using genetic manipulation. Dinosaurs were evil and perished in the flood. Genetic interference with human genes was the ploy of fallen angels used to wreck the bloodlines of humankind.
That's it, because God, we are made in the image of God.
Right.
And so they want to erase that because they wanted to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's because of that, we start to have a very different way. I mean, not a different way, is that God is opening our eyes in something that we've never seen before, and which is very interesting because I was speaking with a friend, and she was saying, we were in the era of punishment and reward, and like we had like the 10 Commandments, which is right. We were learning like children, okay? If you do something right, you have a reward. If you do something wrong, you have punishment, okay? Like we were growing. But now humanity is going to come into a new era, which is perfection and unification. Very, very, very important. And is what we say, like we are going into the millennium, and the millennium is Shabbat, represented by Shabbat, the 7th millennium, which is like perfection. Everything will be like how God wanted at the beginning in the Garden of Eden. We are going back to this level, but all in a beautiful way, and unification, because God is going to be Echad, and we are going to be one with Him. Again, you can see that in Zechariah 3:9, that we will be shoulder to shoulder, and again is this name Echad, and so is all part of this of these things. And now we start to see that when the spy went over there, is because God said, now all these Nephilim, I want you to fight them because they need to be annihilated, because they are bringing evil, and we don't want evil. And if there was no more evil, right, His kingdom was able to come.
Yeah, the Jewish people were instructed to destroy the Nephilim and the giants in the land by God because they were evil, and God knew that they couldn't be
redeemable.
They weren't redeemable, yeah. So they had to be destroyed, and we didn't understand that. Well, we've run out of time, Natalie. It's always the pressure of time. It's great to be with you. We will be with you again, God willing, and look forward to your company. Don't forget you can visit our website. There's a lot of information on www.israelfirst.org. Don't forget Natalie's book, The beauty of the Hebrew language, you can get that on the website, you can order it, and there's even an e-version available at Amazon. All the details are on the website under Hebrew book. Please email us. We love to receive your comments. You can comment underneath the video if you're watching us on YouTube. But if you're watching us on another TV station, please do email us at info@israelfirst.org and let us know your thoughts on what's happening in Israel, your thoughts on the Book of Enoch. We'd be very interested to hear from you. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.